name's Vicki Townsend, and I'm the founder and president of Divorce Right. And we provide managerial training for HR professionals and company supervisors so you can begin to recognize divorce in your employees and get them the immediate support. And we provide that divorce coaching and support and case management right here at Divorce Right. Divorce is a huge disruptor, not only to the employee going through it, but to the company they work for. And our mediators and coaches have a 360-degree perspective on the divorce puzzle. They have a deep understanding of the legal, financial, and emotional aspects of divorce, and they can handle even the highest conflict of cases with compassion and professionalism. Our coaches and mediators are trained to look at the entire picture, helping your employees make good decisions based on their goals and their expectations. And we give them hope for a better future. So if you're an HR benefits manager, total rewards manager, an HR benefits provider or consultant, please reach out to us and see if some of our suite of solutions is a good fit for your business. And even if you have a current legal plan in place for your employees, that's not enough to support them through a divorce. And they may even need to make some other decisions. And today we're going to be talking about decisions with divorce that really, really impact a very special group of people. Today we're going to be talking about QDROs and pensions for our first responders during a divorce with our special guest, Matt Lundy. Matthew Lundy earned his BA from Duke University and his JD with honors from the University of Florida. Following law school, Matthew worked in a law firm handling primarily domestic relations matters and civil litigation. It was during this time that Matt began to develop a reputation as a young lawyer with a special skill for handling complicated legal and financial issues. As a result, Matthew took on the difficult task of building a practice across state lines, including taking numerous bar exams in addition to his regular workload. This not only grew his practice, but also his knowledge of the law, which can vary dramatically from state to state. Within 2 years of beginning his practice, Matthew was trying cases, publishing scholarly articles in a variety of legal journals, and traveling around the country conducting seminars for judges, attorneys, and other professionals. So today we are going to be talking about first responders and their pensions and how those are divided during a divorce. So Matt, thanks so much for doing this with us today. I appreciate it, and I know your time is limited, so we want to get started.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So glad to have you here. So why are these different? Their pensions different from corporate pensions, and what makes them so tricky in family law?
So they're different from corporate pensions in a lot of ways, but worth noting up front is that pensions are just different from other pensions. So there's 100,000 retirement plans in this country, and each one of them is sort of like its own mini jurisdiction with its own particular set of rules. In the government context versus the corporate context, the pensions that people are receiving are usually not fully funded the same way. So they're subject to certain types of forfeiture. Generally speaking, in the corporate context, somebody who's like a CEO or somebody like that might have multiple forms of retirement, whereas somebody who's a firefighter is just going to have one pension, and that pension is going to constitute a far more significant financial asset for them than somebody who is in the C-suite at a corporation.
So how are they divided in a family of law? Because I understand that they can't be attached to a legal case.
It depends on the retirement plan. If we're talking about municipal retirement plans in the state of Florida, generally speaking, they do not accept QDROs, meaning that they will not take a court order and make a payment to the former spouse, to the non-retirement plan participant spouse. But that's not true for all of them. That's true for people who work for cities. People who work for counties typically participate in the Florida retirement system, which is also a government retirement plan, but it's a government retirement plan that has opted in to accepting QDROs. And the same is true, I know, in the state of New Jersey. If you're a policeman or a firefighter, you participate in the state of New Jersey's police and firefighter retirement system, and they will take a court order and make a payment. So the first thing that makes all this complicated is there's so many different types of pensions with so many different sets of rules that the first thing you're always trying to suss out is what exactly are we dealing with and how exactly will they permit this to be divided.
So it's really important to have that summary so that even if it may not be readable by the general public, but somebody like you can help them understand,
Right.
right, what's going to happen to them. So what happens if, let's say, they quit before they're vested?
So if somebody quits before they're vested, it depends on the type of retirement and what the circumstances were with them departing. If you're completely unvested, the odds are you're not going to get anything except perhaps a refund of any contributions that you've made to the retirement plan. If you are vested and you quit, you can usually keep the retirement plan, but you'll have the option to receive a refund of your contributions. If you're fired, it's a little bit different. It depends on why you were fired. If you committed a crime, very frequently, the pension will treat that as a forfeiture and your pension will just disappear and return back to the plan. And that becomes a really big issue because when you divorce and you enter into a settlement agreement, hopefully through mediation, there's going to be usually most of the time a lag time between when you sign that settlement agreement and when you actually retire. And that time period creates a lot of issues. And one of the things you and I spoke about before is what we're trying to do in a family law case doesn't really necessarily work well on the planet Earth. We're trying to give clients a certain amount of certitude about what's going to happen 10 or 20 years down the line. But
Right.
of course, human beings are terrible at doing that. So if somebody would have said to you in the year 2012 that 8 years from now, we're going to have a giant shutdown of everything, that would have been totally unpredictable and laughable. And that it's going to change the face of our economics completely, that would have been totally unpredictable and laughable. The same is true when you try to superimpose long-term judgment on pensions. No one really knows how long a pension is going to be around. Pensions fold all the time, including municipal pensions. And a good example of that is in the state of New Jersey. In the state of New Jersey, they had a huge pension liability. And in 2013, the governor of New Jersey signed an executive order. There was no active state legislature. There was just an executive order that said, okay, this is costing us too much money. No more cost of living adjustments. We're freezing this pension at people's regular benefit level, whatever they're getting now, whatever they've qualified for. And then they're not getting any more cost of living adjustments. But for anybody who was valuing their pension up until 2013,
Right.
they were expecting, okay, every year this is going to go up by somewhere between 1 and 10%. So all of those valuations would have been incorrect, which is always first thing I say to anybody who's trying to get certitude about what they're going to get in the future, which is there is no certitude.
Mm. Oh my gosh. And what happens if, God forbid, they pass away?
So that also depends on the retirement plan. So if you're getting a divorce, I think the context we're concerned about here is family
In the
law.
Yes, yes.
So the question then becomes, if I pass away, will my former spouse be able to collect my pension? And the answer is, it depends on the retirement plan. Um, if you're in, for example, police and firefighter state of New Jersey, there is no survivor benefit for former spouses. Once you get divorced, even if you had a survivor benefit in place, it terminates. If you're in the state of Florida and you're in the Florida retirement system, you can elect option 3, which gives a survivor benefit to your spouse, but you can only elect it if you're retiring while you're still married. If you've already divorced and you haven't started your retirement yet, you can't really get a lifetime survivor benefit. So your death is going to be the end of that pension. And then with each municipality, and we definitely don't have time to walk through the
Right,
hundreds of municipalities, they all have
right.
different rules for former spouses about who can and can't be elected, which begs the question, why? In the corporate context, you can make your former spouse your survivor beneficiary, but in the public context, you can't necessarily. Why would that be the rule? And I will not make you answer that question. The answer to that question is because in the public sector, these are taxpayer funded retirement plans. And so they want to mitigate the liability of the taxpayers. And so by making it so that people do not qualify for survivor benefits, they're reducing the tax liability of the public.
Wow. That makes that kind of gives me a little bit of agita just listening to that you're making decisions with somebody's livelihood. So, wow, that was a tough one. So, so how at the end of it all, we're going in the case of family law, how do we figure out how much so we're working on a case right now with a firefighter. that's only been there for 6 years, so he's not vested. And so how do we even figure out how much it's worth?
So it depends on what it means. So if we're trying to figure out what their monthly accrued benefit is, usually that's sort of a relatively simple calculation. We're going to take time and service multiplied by a salary factor, and then there's going to be some sort of multiplier. So, for example, they might have a formula that says for each year that you work at this pension, we're going to give you, 3% of the average of your highest 5 years of salary or something like that. So if you can get those numbers, you can plug it in. It's not super complicated. Sometimes people hire me to do it, but usually the retirement plan will afford you a benefit estimate at no cost. Sometimes they charge something much less than what an accountant or somebody like me would charge, a couple $100 or something like that to have their actuaries do it. But keep in mind what I said. You can get an estimate, but it's just an estimate. So
Right.
that becomes highly problematic down the line. The more you try to sate somebody's desire for certitude, the greater the probability is that they're going to be unhappy with what happens at the end if it's 10 or 20 years down the line, because it's probably going to change.
Because nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody sees a pandemic coming, right? That's
Exactly.
so yeah. So can we switch really quickly? So that's pensions. Is there anything else that a firefighter or police officer or an EMT needs to know about that in terms of divorce?
So there's a lot of things. One of the most common things that comes up is drop, which is the
Mm,
deferred retirement option plan. And basically, what drop is it lets you retire for pension purposes. So you'll start receiving your pension on a monthly basis, but you're allowed to continue to work and make your salary. And so while you're working and making your salary, your pension is being deposited into this drop account, which is basically like an IRA with a fixed interest return. So it's a guaranteed win for the participant. And the question that we always get is, if I go into drop after I divorce, is any part of my drop marital? And the answer to that, much to the chagrin of the participants, is yes. Whatever part of it is assigned to your former spouse, whatever part of the monthly pension that's assigned to your former spouse that goes into that account, that's theirs, plus the interest on their share. So
right.
the major benefit of drop that I try to explain to those people who are upset to find out that their former spouse is going to get part of it is that you get to continue to work and make an income that's totally non-marital. That's yours. And your remaining part of the pension is going into the drop and getting that interest return. The other
Interesting.
the other
Good.
thing that they run into very commonly is they have deferred compensation plans. And deferred compensation plans is one of those terms that sort of just gets thrown around and people don't really know what it means. But it's usually in the first responder context a 457B plan, which is
Mhm.
very similar to a 401k plan. You're making a contribution, there's a matching contribution, and then it's invested in the market and it's getting returns. It's usually exactly the same as a 401k, but sometimes they're not rollover eligible for the former spouses. So if you get part of a 457B and you're the non-participant, they might make you cash it out and not give you the rollover option. Although I'm seeing that less and less as time goes on.
Oh yeah, that's a big one because in the case of, and I hate to be sexist about this, but the majority of firefighters are men. So if their wife has to take it, she also has to take it in the case that you're talking about. She gets the tax hit
Yeah,
of that, and that can be really very expensive for her.
right.
Wow,
And
that's
and then the other thing that's like a surprise is that for the plans that do not take quadros, what that means as a practical matter is that the participant is going to receive the pension money and then have to get taxed on it and then pay their former spouse net of taxes every single month. So that means they can't really sever ties quite the way they might want to.
right. Well, that's with a lot of things like this, right? A lot of divorce. It it doesn't necessarily end so cleanly, right?
No.
There's a lot of entanglements, a lot of legs to this octopus. Well, thank you. Is there anything else? Any other tip or words of advice you can give a first responder as they're going through this? What would they, what's your biggest question that you get asked that we haven't covered here today?
I mean, the biggest thing that I see, like I said in the beginning, this is the biggest asset for so many first responders, their pension. And so it's a much bigger deal to them than I think it is to the general public and to public employees in general. It's their biggest asset. So it's extremely upsetting to them emotionally to have to give up part of it.
Right.
And I would say to you to not get too bogged down thinking about how this is going to destroy your entire future. Because that does not tend to be the case. People tend to get through this, to sever it, to give more than they thought they were going to give, and then they're just fine afterward, given enough time away from the divorce. You don't ever have to be happy that you're giving up part of your pension,
right.
but sort of getting lost in the maze of, oh my God, I'm ruined. I don't think that is what tends to happen to most people in these cases, including the first responders that I'm dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, thank you so much. Can you do me a favor? Can you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. All my contact information is on my website, www.mlundylaw.com. And I'm
Okay.
here if
And we
anyone
will
has
put,
questions.
yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That was awesome today because we are looking for all sorts of ways to answer the questions that first responders have. And this is obviously a very big one. Matt, thank you so much. And for everybody else that's watching today, we will be back next Thursday with another topic about how you can help your employees get through the divorce process a little kinder, a little gentler, and so that they can come back to work as focused and participatory employees. So thank you. Thanks, Matt, and we'll see
Thank
you
you.
soon.